I'm Daniel, I'm 17 and I've been at Nisai for a couple of years. I was diagnosed with ASD in year 5, but I've always found school stressful. The anxiety for school got so bad at times that I was too ill to go. We tried a special school, but that was no better and arguably made things worse. Spent a couple of years out of education before starting Nisai, and it was like waking up for a nightmare. At Nisai, the teachers are much more willing to listen and help. The students are much friendlier and warmer to new people, and not having to go to a physical school makes getting an education much easier. Now that I'm at Nisai, I'm at the point where I'm studying for GCSEs, which we didn't think would happen at a normal school. I get to wake up every day and just be worried about getting things in on time, or not being late, just like everyone else. I'm not scared to go to school. Makes a really nice change.
This room has been my classroom for the past 1.5 years. This is my maths teacher. That's their icon, so I know that she's busy teaching at the moment. This is the people who are attending the classes, so it's me and my friends who are in it, who are both doing A-level maths. On the chat, if I've got any problems, I would write to her on there. It's an interactive whiteboard, so she's been busy writing out like some workings out, and then she would pass the floor to us and we would write down what we thought the answer was, or she would give us a bit of help. First lesson, I thought, I don't know if there's going to be a teacher there, I don't know if they can see me, I don't know if they can hear me, I wasn't quite sure.
Okay, it's 1:10, so we'll get started.
If you can hear me, can you please let me know?
Gabriella, thank you for turning up today.
Good weekend?
Certainly doesn't look like a normal school, but yes, this is our virtual school. We've got John in there teaching away. Science, English, history, mathematics.
There's no sir, there's no miss, there's no them and us. We try and get away from all of that. You don't have any sort of peer pressure, or there's no judgment. I mean, they come from all over the UK.
Medically ill and children with special needs and children who are excluded.
A lot of students who have issues with either bullying.
And a lot have ME.
For ME, I used to dance a lot, really sporty and academic and everything like that. And when I got ME, it was like hitting a brick wall. I did about 6 months in sixth form before I got really ill and I had to leave school. I thought, I'm just going to have to completely give up everything.
But here, if we can say, no, you can. Do this little bit, do this little bit, do this little bit. And the little bits become a bigger bit.
You think about them and where they are and what they look like? Or...
I think it's human nature, isn't it, to build a picture from their voice. And sometimes when you see them, you think, oh, I didn't realise they were going like that at all.
I'll definitely remember both my teachers and how much they helped me towards hopefully getting some good A-level results.
But you'll just remember them as
little icons. There'll be just little icons in my head. Right, off we go. It was so hard to get the funding to learn online, and I literally thought I would never be able to do my A-levels.
Deep breaths.
I know Kate's got real determination and she's tried so hard for this. We're just really proud of her for keeping going through all of this. I think other people might have laid down and sort of said, well, you know, I can't deal with this is too much. We've always been of the opinion that, you know, it's the effort that you put in, the numbers or the scores at the end don't really matter too much. But life's not like that. She knows that she's got to achieve certain things.
When I actually sat this round of exams, I was actually really not very well at all. I was unsure if I would even be able to sit them. So at the end of the day, whatever I come out with is, you know, just sitting it was so much hard work. So I'll be happy. I hope. I think the education system is becoming a lot more rigid when really it should be becoming more flexible. I don't quite understand why it's becoming so hard for people who really need the most support. It's literally just for people who go to school, they sit their exams, they do well, they go off to uni.
Please go to the second floor.
Morning, kids.
Hiya, I'm alright, thank you. How did you do?
I did good. I got into my fifth
Did you? Yeah!
How do you do?
I haven't got them yet.
Second floor?
Second floor.
Oh gosh, this is a bit daunting. Thank you. Terrified.
Yeah.
Oh, they're bad. Right, okay. Well, I got an A in my textiles, so that's good. And I got a C overall in my maths, which is...
Those are great grades, by the way.
Really good.
Those are
Very
fantastic
good.
grades.
But I failed my core 4.
It's maths at A level.
Just shows how high you've set your standards. If you're getting a C, you're very disappointed.
Yeah, I know. I definitely am going to reset.
Did you do?
See you.
I got an A and a C.
And she's beating
Right,
herself
you
up
got
about
an
the
A in
C.
tech.
I got a C, a D and an E. And
Oh well, might be in a class together next year.
Yeah, might be.
It could be worse.
4 A's. 4 A's.
I'm in a faith I'm going to have
Very
to go
humbling,
today
very
because I got
humbling.
into Bristol University, UWE University, and it's just made me over the moon because I didn't think I was going to.
And Richmond University
And Roehampton University.
Still hasn't heard from Northumbria University
at all.
at all,
So I'm
have
just
you?
waiting on that.
And it's not fair because she's been on the phone since 8:15 this morning.
The day has been a long day.
Everyone up to next.
Pub.
I'm literally going back to bed.
I'm going to go out have something to eat or...
I don't think so. I'm so tired now. All the stress over one piece of paper. I'm so determined, but I'm just thinking I'm going to have to go through this for another 3 years.
I'm still hugely proud of her as a mum for taking these steps, coming into college, finding things to do, having the ongoing enthusiasm despite a debilitating illness.
Hopefully, at least one more person, even if it's one person, can get some funding to be in education. And I hope to inspire people so that they know that no matter what they've got, they can do it, no matter how long it takes.
Oh, this is when we cry when we
I
have our
don't
special
cry.
time. No, I do. I'm so weeping, aren't I?
Don't cry. Oh, no, that's embarrassing.
Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to wish you a very warm welcome to today's event, Empowering Learners with Autistic Spectrum Conditions and Nisai Approach. I'm Paul Keeley-Side, and I'm the Director of Nisai Education Trust, and it's my great pleasure to be your host this afternoon, or this evening if you're in Asia. At Nisai, we believe every learner deserves access to high-quality, inclusive education, no matter what their background, their location, or what their learning needs are. So today we will focus on empowering learners with autistic spectrum conditions, highlighting how tailored support, flexible learning, and understanding the individual needs can fully unlock everyone's potential. This event brings together passionate educators, parents, and specialists to share their insights and experiences in supporting autistic learners on their education journey. I'm delighted to introduce the guest speakers joining us today. Ms. Sam McFarlane, Education Officer for NASEN, the National Association for Special Educational Needs in the UK, who'll be sharing key messages around understanding high quality education for autistic students. Ms. Leslie Laws, the Head of Teaching and Learning from Nisai Learning UK, who will talk about teaching and learning for students with autism and special educational needs and how it's delivered at Nisai. And Leslie's an amazing practitioner. We've got so much to learn from her. And finally, two parents whose stories will offer valuable insights into learning with Nisai. Ms. Sharina Yunus, parent of Mohammed Safiuddin from Brunei Dar es Salaam, and Mr. Vivek Kumar Singh, a parent of Tame Singh from the Netherlands. Their stories are unbelievably powerful, and they're all about how parents, like you, like me, want the best for all their children, and when they find the best kind of individualized education, are able to see their children blossom. Here's what you can expect from today's event. The first thing is we'll have an expert talk on autism with Sam McFarlane. The second part will be all about teaching and learning with Nisai, which is shared by Leslie Laws. And the part 3 will be the learning journeys of Nisai students, where the 2 families where I've talked about will share their experiences within the Nisai community. And then at the end, part 4, I'll host a short question and answer session with the speakers. And it would be really wonderful if you could pop some of your questions into the chat box so that we can find out what people are really keen to learn about today and see if we can answer them for you. We hope you leave today feeling more informed, certainly more inspired and confident about how supportive and inclusive education approach can make a lasting difference. Most importantly, I think I'd like you to come away thinking about equity in education. How is it we can use the tools, the approaches, the knowledge and the understanding of professionals to ensure that all our children are able to get fantastic, high quality education that sets them up for the best possible life. Thank you. Now let's begin with our first speaker, Sam McFarlane from the National Association of Special Educational Needs.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. There we go. Hello, everybody. My name's Sam. As Paul introduced me, I am a education officer with NASEN. I'm also, before I joined NASEN, a teacher. I've worked as a special educational needs coordinator as well across several settings. Just a little bit about NASEN. So we are a not-for-profit organisation. We're a charity. Our main remit is to support practitioners to meet the needs of all pupils, and that includes pupils with additional needs and also pupils with autism. We've got a fantastic website with lots of resources, so I would encourage you to maybe, if you have 5 minutes, to go and have a look at our website. It's there on the screen, and we have quite a large and growing membership as well. Okay, that's a little bit about NASEN. So in this very brief short talk, what I'll be looking at is the overview of autism and unpacking some of the behaviour that we might be seeing in our children or young people, and thinking about what the learning implications are and what high quality learning and education looks like for our children and young people. Okay, so autism is a medically diagnosed condition, and here on the screen you can see what that might look like in terms of what the medical practitioners might be looking for when they come to diagnose. And so it's around social differences in terms of social imagination. Well, that really means that idea of being able to think abstractly or thinking of concepts. It might be differences in social communication, and that is how a person might communicate with others and maybe understand what others are saying to them as well, and interact with others too. Also, it might be that individuals who are autistic display some repetitive behaviours, and they may have social sensory processing differences, and we'll unpack that a little bit more actually in a minute. But it's important to note that this is a medical definition, and actually when we think about our children and young people, we don't necessarily think like that in medical terms, and so I want to unpack what that might look like in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So there is an organisation called Ambitious About Autism, and I think this really kind of explains what the differences might be between for people with autism. And so it's thinking about neurodivergent thinking, differences in the way that we think, and also sometimes in the way that we behave. So there might be differences in eye contact. Sometimes a person with autism can find eye contact quite intense and may avoid it. There might be sensory sensitivities or sensory overload, and that can be around temperature. It might be around lighting or sounds within an environment too. So we can be sensitive to sounds. We might be sensitive to smells as well. And that can impact on a person's ability to focus within that environment, and which will impact on learning actually. We might have sensory seeking behaviours. So you might find that an individual seeks out certain sensory feedback. So it might be soft, it could be soft furnishings in my experience, it could be soft things, it could be stimming or spinning around or looking for different types of lighting, but it might be seeking out those sensory experiences. We talk about differences in social interaction and communication, and that really is quite key into understanding how a person with autism may communicate in a different way to maybe what we might be expecting, and understand language in a different way as well. And that can mean that sometimes figurative language is quite challenging to understand. So things like similes and metaphors, and really understanding literal language and literal communication is much more effective. And here it also talks about monotropism, which really is the interest, quite narrow interests or focused interests on one or a few particular topics. And that can be quite evident for a person with autism as well. And some of this, you may be thinking, actually, yeah, I can identify with that. I understand that, and I've experienced those types of behaviours. So that, I think that makes it a bit more tangible and moves us away from that medical jargon to what we might be seeing and what a person with autism might be experiencing. So, well, I'm here to talk about what makes high quality education for a person with autism. And really, the Autism Education Trust, which is based in the UK, which is a not-for-profit organisation as well, and have conducted some research, and the result is what is outlined here in this wheel, and this is what they are saying makes really good education. So the key here is to understand the individual, right? Build positive relationships with the individual, build positive rapport, take the time to get to know them, get to know their interests. What do they like? What do they dislike? What are their sensory experiences as well? But it's really important to get to know what that looks like for the individual. Building learning environments that are supportive and empathetic to needs, and having those right curriculum adaptations for the individual. So it might be around the pace in which the curriculum moves, it might need adapting. It could be in terms of what the sensory experience is for that individual. So we might be thinking about tangible, concrete things like lighting, might be bright lighting, it might be thinking about what kinds of sounds are in the environment, all those kinds of things, and making those adaptations as well. We're going to, on the next slide, looking a little bit more focus into what really a high quality education, and I also should say a supportive education would take into consideration for a person with autism, and also, you know, a person with additional needs. I think this applies to many different people too. So here are 7 focus areas that I think should be considered in terms of the support for a person with autism. So we need to think about the differences in how the person, the individual communicates with us in terms of their social interaction, in terms of their social communication, in terms of how they communicate to us and what they understand when we are communicating to them. That's a really important consideration. Good quality education and good quality support will consider that. I've mentioned before here, it says sensory processing. So we need to consider what impact that sensory processing may have on the individual and also the impact that will have on their learning, and make those adjustments. It's really useful to talk to the individual about how they experience the environment they're in. Are things too loud? Are things too bright? Is there something they need that can help them focus or improve their focus? A really important consideration. Also, we need to think about how we support the individual in terms of their emotional understanding and their self-awareness and their emotional regulation. How is the individual managing their emotions? How do they regulate their emotions? What do we need? What do they need in terms of helping them to do that and manage their emotions effectively? That's a really important consideration. We are talking about learning. We need to consider what curriculum is available to them, how relevant it is, how important it is in terms of their particular phase and age. What are their aspirations? What are they looking to move on to? What are their interests? That is a very important consideration. Equally, and I think this ties in with the learning, is how is the support and the education enabling our child or young person to become an independent individual, to prepare them for the next stage in their life, to prepare them for community participation, and always be kind of forward-looking and aspirational in how we support them to become independent and move on to the next phase in their life. So they are key aspects to consider. And now I wanted to spend a little bit of time thinking about behaviour from those aspects. We may be experiencing behaviour which is unexpected, or maybe it's challenging from our child or young person. And if we link it back to those 7 aspects of what we need to consider, we need to be thinking about how our child or young person is managing their emotions, how we're supporting them to manage their emotions, because they may feel big emotions. We also need to think about how we're supporting our child or young person to communicate with us and others and express their thoughts and feelings in a way that is authentic and appropriate for them. What we might see while we are helping them to manage these aspects of themselves and their lives is we may see that behaviour which is unexpected. It may be challenging, but actually we need to consider that in and of itself as a form of communication. So that behaviour is communicating something to us that we need to unpack, and we need to kind of be a bit of a behaviour detective in this aspect. The image on the screen is of an iceberg, and I think this is a really useful analogy because we will see a certain amount of the iceberg. The bit that's bobbing above the water, that's the bit that we see, and we may see those behaviours. They may be challenging, and we may react to those, and that's the bit we see. Underneath the water, underneath the surface, is a whole massive part of the iceberg that we don't see, and these will be drivers for our child or young person. These will be drivers of their behaviour. What's going on underneath all that for them to act in a particular way, and it's our job to unpack that for them. And I think it's a really useful analogy to think about the behaviour in that way. It's communicating something to us, and we need to explore what that is. A useful way of doing this is to take this ABC approach, which is if we're seeing a particular behaviour and we've noticed a particular pattern, is to start to think about what's happening when this behaviour occurs, when this reaction happens? What's happening, the antecedent, what is happening right before that behaviour? What was the behaviour, and what did it either help our child or young person to communicate, or what did we see happen? And then what happened after the behaviour? Okay, so what was the consequence of that? So that's why it's at ABC. But this is quite a simple approach to apply into beginning to understand some of those behaviours which we might currently not necessarily understand. We can apply that. We can take time to stop, pause, and think about actually what was happening before that. Is there something in the environment? Is there something sensory that we're not noticing? Or is there something about the work maybe that's happening? Or is it something about the time of day? All of these considerations and more, you can begin to unpack as an antecedent. You look at the behaviour as the form of communication, and then look at what the consequence was, what happened after it. And that will help us begin to unpack that bottom bit of that iceberg, if you like. And I think it's really quite a simple approach, but it's very effective. And it's really key for our children and young people with autism for us to understand what that behaviour is doing, what are they communicating to us, because it's not always communication in a way that we would expect, and we need to be sensitive to that. I also want to take a bit of time to think about the strengths. So really, it's important to remember, I feel, that this is a different way of thinking. It's not a deficit. It's a different way of thinking, and we need to be appreciative of that and the strengths that it will bring. That's not to say that there aren't challenges and barriers that we need to support our children and young people to overcome, but they are certainly strengths that they have that we can celebrate and help them recognise in themselves. And I think that's really important there. So if I just click on. So if you remember the slide which went through all the different kind of characteristics of autism that I described earlier, we can kind of flip them and reframe those as strengths. So it might be in terms of that monotropism, we're thinking about actually that's really useful trait in some professions and in school can be hyper-focus, that ability to focus in and really concentrate on a particular subject, topic or activity can be really, really useful. And that attention to detail can make them great for lots of different activities in learning, actually. There is something in their openness and honesty, which is, is a really lovely quality that can be celebrated. That truthfulness and honesty, I think, is brilliant, and we can praise our young people for that. They may have a good memory. They may be really knowledgeable in one particular area or several particular areas, very useful. They can be very creative and offer that alternative viewpoint and that alternative view of problem solving, which can be really useful and is actually very valued in many professions too. So there are lots of things that we can celebrate and we can begin to recognise for our children and young people, that I think it's really important to acknowledge and notice. So moving on to what that high quality education looks like. So what does that look like for my child or for my young person? And I think really it's about being in an environment, an educational environment, which acknowledges and embraces the different way of thinking and the different way of being. Right? We are all unique and different. And really, we want to be in an educational place that allows us to be that person and thrive in that space. That is key. I also think it is about, making sure that education is relevant to the individual and in terms of their aspirations, where they want to go next, what their motivation is, what are they interested in, what do they need to get out of their education, and is it relevant? Make sure it is relevant. It is key to have a defined and purposeful outcomes for their education, so they know as an individual when they're learning, exactly what they're working towards. And that's broken down for them into manageable chunks as well, which is really important. But for you as parents, it's really important to know this is the overall goal and how we're going to achieve that. I think I've mentioned it a few times, but it is crucial that whatever is being taught in education, holistically as well, prepares our children and young people for their next steps in their life. Because that's what education is all about, isn't it? It's about becoming an independent and resilient individual that can thrive through life and is prepared for life. So I'll move on because yeah, there we go. So the key messages here really, and it is about being person-centered. And when I say person-centered, it's about those last aspects of what makes a high-quality education, is that the individual is in the center of all of the decision-making around and has those options and choices within their education. It acknowledges what is important for them in terms of where they want to go next, what do they need to do to achieve that, but it also acknowledges what is important to the individual, so what their interests are, what their motivations are, what they want to get out of their education, and it makes that balance. So that's really important. That's a key message of person-centered working and education. The key messages are it's personalised, that allows the individual to express themselves in an authentic way. So we're linking it back to that communication style and understanding that there are different types of communication, and we are unpacking that in terms of behaviour as well. And it offers choice for our child and young person, and you as their parents and carers too. So they're the key messages. Okay, so it was a very short overview into what high quality education should look like for our children and young people. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I think that was an amazing run through.
Thank you.
That's fine. There's certain things that came through for me there, I think, that were really, really important. The first one was that real focus on putting the child first, the child or the young person first. There's something else about purpose and next steps in everybody's lives. And the third one was, again, we come back to this piece about equity and ensuring that each young person has fairness and the ability to make the most of the skills that they have. And I love the way that you flipped from what could be a deficit into what would be a positive, because that is the core of the equity piece. The other bit that I think was interesting that perhaps doesn't always get reflected on enough is this idea of parents and educators as behaviour detectives. I think it's a simple concept, but it's really, really important, because too often we can see what is a real challenge and not have the time to unpack what's there. So Sam, thank you. I know there'll be questions coming into the question box at the bottom, and we'll cover those in the main Q&A session. But I certainly learned stuff there, and I've been in special ed for far too long. Okay, so everybody, we'll have a chance to talk to Sam again later in the question and answer session. And what I'd like to do now is to welcome Leslie, who is someone who plays a central role in how Nisai supports learners with autism and special educational needs every single day of the week, all the way through a child, in some cases, a child's secondary education and beyond. So Leslie's been a long-standing member of the Nisai team and has got extensive experience in inclusive education. And Leslie will be sharing how we deliver education and learning to the children at Nisai Group. Thank you. Over to you, Leslie.
Thank you, Paul. I'll just share my PowerPoint. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Whether you're an educator yourself or a parent or guardian, or even just someone who is committed to inclusive education, It's great to have you here with us. As Paul said, as Head of Teaching and Learning, I'll be discussing with you how Nisai delivers lessons and utilises a range of interactive tools and communication methods within and outside of live lessons to suit the needs of our students and those students that have special educational needs, including autistic learners. We found that our online teaching platform can offer powerful tools for creating more personalised, flexible and supportive learning. So first of all, I'll just recap quickly on SEND. So students with SEND may require special educational provision, meaning support that's additional to or different from what is typically provided in a mainstream traditional setting. And recognising and understanding SEND is essential to adapting teaching and creating inclusive learning environments where students can actually succeed. So a young person themselves has special educational needs if they have any type of learning problem or disability that makes it more difficult for them to learn than most individuals of their age. So they might have problems with schoolwork, they may have issues or barriers with communication or behaviours. And special educational needs is actually a legal definition that refers to individuals with learning problems or disabilities that make it harder for them to learn than most students of the same age. So at Nisai, our students with SEND have unique strengths and gifts, and all of our teachers help students access learning and connect with others in their classroom. So Nisai teachers themselves are committed to supporting their students' successes and progress, and all Nisai teachers have got a variety of students with diverse backgrounds and educational needs within their classroom, and they all receive regular CPD, which includes SEND and also safeguarding training. Teachers continually strive to encourage academic progress by creating lessons which are innovative, interactive, and also quality assured. So if we look very broadly at SEND, there's 4 main areas of specific difficulties, and SEND themselves can include a wide range of needs such as cognitive and learning difficulties, for example, things like dyslexia, communication and interaction needs, so autism or ASD, social, emotional and mental health, so things like anxiety, and also physical or sensory needs and barriers. So that could be visual or hearing impairments or any sort of physical disability. So some of the specific learning difficulties that we come across are some of them the most common that we find are dyslexia, which is issues around literacy, reading and spelling. Some students may also have dysgraphia, which is difficulties in their handwriting or spelling, or even just organising their thoughts on paper. Dyscalculia, which is specific difficulty associated with numbers. So for example, they might see numbers that might be jumbled up, they might have problems recognising a number, and also dyspraxia, which is difficulties with fine and or gross motor skills. So common difficulties include weaker working memory, so they might have an inability to hold information or recall it quickly when they're doing a task, or they might need maybe more kind of verbal prompts, or they might need very clear, precise visual reminders of what the task is. So next example we're going to look at is ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So young people with ADHD might appear to be less mature than their peers. They may struggle with keeping still, so they might constantly look like they're on the move. They might seem to behave impulsively, and they may struggle to maintain focus and concentration and remain on task. So whilst not classified as a specific learning difficulty in the same way as others, ADHD can often co-occur with other barriers. And all SEND barriers can affect individuals in different ways, often leading to challenges in the classroom and in everyday life. So support and accommodations can help individuals manage their difficulties and to thrive, which is what we aim to do. So with autistic spectrum disorders, or ASD, again, it can affect individuals in various ways. Autism is often described as being a spectrum, meaning that each individual experiences a very unique combination of strengths and challenges. And it's really essential to recognise that autism is not just a one-size-fits-all. It's a very unique. Each individual has got their own strengths and needs. So how does Nisai help students who may have ASD? So our online learning platform can be particularly beneficial for autistic students and also students with other SEND needs and barriers, because it offers a much more flexible and personalised learning environment that suits their individual learning needs. So, for example, reduced sensory overload. Often traditional classrooms can be very noisy, sometimes crowded, unpredictable because they can't predict what other behaviour is going to be, which for somebody with autism, it can be very overwhelming. So Nisai's learning platform allows students to work in very calm, familiar environments, because potentially they could be at home in their bedroom where they're very comfortable, and that helps to reduce sensory stress and distractions. It also allows for a flexible pace and schedule. So many autistic learners benefit from being able to work at their own pace. So Nisai offers lesson recordings, which provide opportunity for lessons to be paused, replayed, or even spaced out over breaks, which supports self-regulation and also helps to reduce anxiety. Online learning also provides less social pressure. So social interaction in traditional classroom settings and skills can be challenging for some autistic students. Online learning limits that pressure of face-to-face communication, which can sometimes be quite difficult, and allows students to interact in a more comfortable way. So they might type instead of speaking, or perhaps they even use like a visual expression, like an emoji. It provides a predictable structure. So all of our courses have a very clear and concise and consistent format. Schemes of work are shared with students. Students can actually see their timetable on our MVA, and the lesson activities are organised and structured, which is very helpful for students who prefer a routine and predictability. We have tailored learning tools. So again, many autistic students can be visual learners. They respond well to visual aids. They might need that kind of visual prompting. So our online lessons can include videos, we have diagrams, we can even have subtitles and captions in our lessons, and all of those interactive elements that support different learning styles. They've got the benefit of more time to process information. So Nisai teachers allow students extra time to think and process information and prepare responses, which can lead to better understanding and, again, reduce stress. Within our classrooms, we have a private chat function that can also facilitate communication, and that can alleviate any anxieties that students have about open communication in the classroom. Perhaps they want that to be private and they don't want to share necessarily with their peers. We can offer personalised support and assistive technology. So Nisai's online learning platform provides opportunities for students to use assistive tools. So again, like I said, we've got closed captions in our live lessons. They also have transcripts when they watch recordings. They have the ability to adjust their font size and colour so they can have the contrast what they like. And also we can give one-to-one support via private chat within the classroom, or if needed, we can also use our breakout rooms, which is like a private classroom within the classroom where the teacher can do a one-on-one or a small group chat. Online learning also facilitates use of things like text-to-speech or speech-to-text tools for the students. They can customise their own PC settings to their personal preferences. So for some students with visual issues, they might prefer, say, having a grayscale, so they've got a better contrast. So they can really sort of control their learning environment. It also offers the reduced risk of bullying as well. So learning from home removes many of the social challenges and risks of bullying that some autistic students face in mainstream schools. Oh, sorry, it skipped there. So our lesson structure, typically for our Key Stage 3, which is like our lower secondary, we have NS1, NS2, NS3, which is Nisai Stage 1, Nisai Stage 2, and Nisai Stage 3. And these are typically 4 30-minute lessons a week. And we find that the 30-minute lessons help students to keep focus for the duration of that lesson. Often some students may struggle with attention and have barriers surrounding that, so keeping them focused and doing different tasks within the lesson helps to drive that. And all of our Nisai levels teach key skills that they will need for studying further. So if they want to progress to international GCSEs or IGCSEs or things like CFR, it helps them to develop those skills. For our international GCSEs or IGCSEs, students typically have 4 30-minute live lessons as well. And again, we find that that helps, again, to keep the focus. And students are provided with all of their lesson notes and recordings via our MVA platform. For AS and A2 or A level, students typically have 3 one-hour live lessons, so 3 one-hour lessons a week. And as I said, all the lessons are recorded, all the lesson resources are uploaded to the Nisai Virtual Academy course sites. So they really get to know their course well, they're given all the notes that they need, and they can watch the recordings again to help with the revision. Some students also find that it helps that they can watch the recordings and go over it again at their own pace as well, and break it down into sort of more bite-sized chunks. With our lesson delivery, we use 21st century educational strategies to teach students in order to help prepare them and get them ready for their futures, whether that's further education or whether it's adulthood. And we use 4 learning strategies, which is the foundation of our method. So we call them the 4 C's, which is creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. So these methods of teaching help to inspire students. They allow them to embrace technology for individualized learning, and our educational resources and tools help to support students in strengthening and developing their critical thinking skills. So Nisai's online classrooms, our students and teachers successfully work together to accomplish effective learning outcomes, to establish positive online learning culture. And there's numerous activities available within the MVA itself, as well as we have the chill out zone, where students can actually join groups of interest and post and make those friendship connections. Since each Nisai student is assigned to a small group that studies at similar pace and ability, because Nisai sets by ability rather than by age group, Nisai students receive much more individualised attention, and we have a history of very effective communication with students, with their teachers and peers. So all of our lessons are delivered via our interactive online classroom. For students with barriers like autism, this helps to decrease stress and anxiety. It minimises their sensory overload. It prevents them from having unnecessary personal interactions that might have caused that overload for them in a traditional classroom. It removes any social obligations that students, again, might be exposed to in that traditional setting. So all of our lesson topics follow the scheme of work, which we provide to students on their course sites via the MVA. For any courses that have an exam board, the course material and scheme of work are very carefully developed to meet the assessing criteria and content. And where possible, we also include cross-curricular links. For example, UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goals are embedded in our lessons, which helps to enrich the programme and also contextualise the learning. We have small group sizes, and the way the lessons are taught online helps students again to focus on the lesson because those classroom distractions are minimised. The teaching of topics in individualised student progression are tracked via Nisai's innovative and bespoke computer systems. So teachers are able to see at a glance exactly how students are progressing. So within a typical lesson, and it's difficult because obviously different subjects, but in a typical lesson, students will recap their prior knowledge and they'll complete some sort of starter activity. They'll be introduced to their new learning content, they'll complete learning activities, they'll complete progress checks, including answering questions. There might be issued with post-lesson challenges or PLCs, you might hear them referred to. And those are really tasks that are designed to stretch and challenge their knowledge and help prepare them for the next lesson. Students can also ask their teachers questions at any time in the lesson. And if they need help outside of lesson time, they can communicate with their subject teacher or form tutor via the private and secure student email system. Within our lessons as well, we encourage oracy. So keywords are introduced and explained. We encourage students to use the microphone if they want to. We employ tried and true methods that guarantee students experience less social anxiety, allowing them to focus and concentrate entirely on their studies without the interruptions of the classroom. And our customer portal makes the learning process open and supportive by enabling parents and students to very quickly obtain things like reports, monitor progress, and remain updated about the progress throughout. With our students with barriers, it's important that we offer a range of communication techniques. So our technology assists students to communicate effectively with their teachers. Some ways that students can communicate can be considered argumentative and alternative communication methods, or AAC, which have been proven to be supportive for students with barriers like autism. So in our classroom, we have public text chat, which everybody can see, so the teacher and all the other students. We've got a private text chat box, which is only between the student and the teacher, so no other students can see that. It's a private, confidential messaging system. Students can ask for their microphone to be turned on. They might be doing tasks where they might be asked to write or draw on the board. We have interactive polls, which again are private, confidential, so the students can't see who's voted, but the teacher can see that. We have things like Adobe Actions and requests. So icons can be used to project a message, for example, a thumbs up icon to show agreement, or they can very quickly just click and tell the teacher to slow down or speed up. They can use emojis in the classroom, which can be very expressive. And then outside of the classroom, they've also got their secure private student email account. So all of these are very valuable tools for autistic learners to communicate in a way that they prefer. So to help support our students, teachers access a Nisai system called PWP, which is a personal wellbeing plan. And that is where we can read about all of the individual requirements of our students. And teachers use this information to help guide the support that they provide to the students and make adaptations for their teaching. So if we've been informed that a student has a particular learning need or barrier, we can prepare for that. So for example, some students might have a high anxiety or low confidence in a subject. So teachers might choose to perhaps only use the private chat to communicate that with them at the start, and that can help build their confidence without saying their name out loud, which might be perhaps a trigger for them. So some students may also require extra support, and teachers can have support of web links or resources in the classroom. We include sometimes differentiated tasks or traffic light tasks where students can complete a task depending on their confidence or ability. And teachers, as I said before, also have the option to open a breakout room within a classroom to offer that extra support if it's required, so they can have like a mini one-on-one session if needed. Also, some students might be gifted and talented, and they can be stretched with extension tasks or with those differentiated class tasks within the lesson themselves. And of course, all of our students are also supported by their form tutors and our CAS team, our customer and student support team. So we give regular feedback to our students in the live lessons and also on the assignments to help them make progress. Every term, teachers write individualised termly reports on each learner to provide feedback on their achievements, give advice on how they can improve their subject knowledge and the skill. But overall, our teachers are very highly dedicated to students and helping them succeed. We've introduced a new system for our assignments, or RAG assignments, you might hear them referred to, which is traffic lights for red, amber, green. And it's a way to help personalise students' learning experience. It really benefits the students because it allows them to work at a level that's suitable for them, giving them more ownership of their own learning and helping them to achieve their best. And the subject teacher will set the amber level assignment through the assignment system. But when students open this file, it actually includes the links to the red and the green level as well. So the green level, for example, is a little bit more challenging, while the red level might have maybe some more support. So students can really tailor that for how they need it to be. Within our assignment template as well, students can let us know about their access arrangements, so they can let us know very clearly what help or support they've needed to do their assignments. So they feedback that assistance, which helps to provide more information for the teacher so that they know how to best support a student. They can give them evidence for exam boards if special access arrangements are required due to barriers, etc. So this bit's really important for students to feed this back to us. And at the end of the assignments, the student also has a feedback box, which is very similar to the confidence polls that we have in class. So students can actually tell us how confident they felt when they did this assignment. And that again feeds back to the teacher, not just their academic performance, but how the students perceiving that themselves. So it gives valuable insight about how confident a student is within a topic. So at Nisai, students always come first, and that means understanding and supporting each child as an individual. Students will interact with a multicultural group from around the globe, enhancing their education by being exposed to different viewpoints and cultures. We know how important it is to find the right fit, especially for students with SEND, and we're very proud to offer a flexible, caring learning environment where every student can feel confident and supported. We're very much here to walk alongside you and your child every step of the way, and together we really can make a difference. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll pass you back to Paul now.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Leslie. I think, one, it's always astounding to see how much thought and effort and professionalism goes into constructing each lesson with Nisai, and that each child is at the heart and the middle of everything that you do. I think the other piece is linking back to what Sam was saying earlier about the clarity about the structure, the content, and the outcome for the children, particularly with autism, which we were talking about. It's really, really important that they're engaged, involved, and have that sense of direction. And I think, building on best practice, building on the research you've got, as the team has done at Nisai, is one of the reasons why you're so successful. We're already having comments coming in at the moment, for instance, about whether or not young people might need to have cameras on in the virtual classroom. No, they don't, because it's individualized for them, and it's what they need that's really important. We come back to being little bit being behavior detectives, and finding out what the children need. So thank you, Leslie. You'll be back in a bit, won't you, to do some more question and answer session for us?
Absolutely.
So what I'd like to do now is to move on to something that's really, really, not that Sam and Leslie are not very special, because they are, but we're going to move on to some of our parents who, this is an amazing part of this event, because we as professionals focus on the curriculum and the pedagogy and all those good things, but the lived experience of our families are an astonishing perspective on the work that we do. And actually this feedback loop, listening to our parents and working with them, allows people like Nisai to become better at what they do. So these stories remind us of the real impact inclusive education can have, not just in the classroom, but in the lives and homes of our young people. So first of all, I'm honoured to introduce Ms. Sharina Yunus. Sharina is the mother of Mohammed Sifoon bin Shamsul Bari from Brunei Darussalam, and she's the most passionate advocate for her son. Thank you, Sharina. Over to you.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here and allowing me to share my story. I am Sharina Yunus and I'm from Brunei Darussalam. I have 5 children, and my youngest son was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old. Throughout his early years, we struggled to find a school that would actually, suit his needs and understood his needs as well. Saifuddin is a very shy boy, and he does get anxious very easily. Typically, he finds the demands of both academic expectations as well as social demands overwhelming, and that does tend to cause him to withdraw from those situations. So we were looking for a school that will actually help him grow and learn, but be able to provide a safe environment for him as well. So I was reading the newspaper one day, and I came across the article about Nisai Global School. And what caught my attention was in the article, it mentioned that Nisai is committed to supporting children with special needs, and that it already had a long history of supporting children like my son. And in addition, Nisai Global School also provided online learning, which we felt could be a way to help him overcome the intense social pressure, and that would maybe allow him to thrive and develop his independent learning skill. So we decided to join Nisai, and we signed up to it when he was 12 years old. And in Brunei, although he does follow Nisai, but he still needs to attend the day school. That is part of the requirement. So even though under those circumstances, what we noticed very early on was that the structured learning environment, the gentle pace that the lessons were offered, really helped him adjust and develop his own rhythm to learning. And he was able to focus. He would take his lessons in the evening, but because it was at home, it was comfortable. He felt safe. He was more calm. We noticed that he didn't feel overwhelmed as much. And I have to say that, after a year now with Nisai, he's shown so much improvement. He's now taking ownership of his own learning, and he's managing his time better. He's grown more confident. He's asking questions. And I've seen him grow and thrive over that 1-year period, so much more than I've seen him in a traditional school setting. So both myself and my husband, we are very grateful to Nisai, and we are committed to continue with Nisai for his entire schooling period. I know that the teachers cannot see him throughout his entire daily routines, but I just want to share that since he's shown some improvement, I would say quite a bit of improvement in his academic confidence and ability, we can see now that he's beginning to shine as well socially. So recently, he was invited by a group of friends to go watch a Marvel movie which is the first time for him. And he went with his friend independently and had a wonderful time. So I can say that the concerns that this is an online learning, that he may miss out socially, has been put to rest. And he's more confident than ever. I just want to say thank you. And I hope that, you know, many more families will know about this and join and take the opportunity to help their children. Thank you very much.
Hiya. It sounds, well, there's somebody made a comment the other day, Sharina, that was that we can use these technologies and processes to be closer, not further away. That is to say that this is one step on Mohammed's journey, and this is one of the tools that he can use. And it's just amazing to hear you describe that. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and wish you both so much luck as you move forward. There's nothing else I can say that can add to your words. So thank you. Will you stay to do, because I know people will want to talk to you later on in the Q&A. Will you stay for us? Thank you very much, Shu. That's awesome. So if I could just also introduce Mr. Vivek. So Mr. Vivek Kumar Singh, who will talk about Tanmay, his son, and about how they have found using Nisai as a source of education and how that has worked for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and also for giving this opportunity. So I'm Vivek. I'm the father of, let's say, an autistic son who is now almost getting into teenage. And I will kind of share our journey in the next few minutes as to how things have moved in the last many years. And just give me a moment, just one or two slides just to, I hope it's visible. So I think in my son, like we're talking, I think he got diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Obviously, it's a kind of a shock, like to many parents. In terms of schooling, I think we did manage to send him to inclusive mainstream school, right? So let's say at the first, initial part of our career, I was based in India. Right now, we moved to Netherlands, but he did manage to, let's say, for bulk of his education, attend a kind of inclusive schools, right? So now this did, I would say, from a learning point of view, the schools did help, but we always felt he wasn't very happy with the school setup, always came back, let's say, more anxious or overwhelmed. And as you know, we were kind of talking about half an hour back, you know, those overwhelmed behaviors were kind of showing up in some other form, right, at home or something else, right, because those anxiety was coming up, right? But the root cause was really not feeling very, let's say, comfortable in the school setup. And we were kind of trying to look for a good option where the learning can happen, yet, let's say, the child is not overwhelmed. And this is where we kind of started researching many options, you know, which is available. And I would say we came to know of Nisai through the Cambridge, let's say, the website, where we looked at all the online schools, whatever is available. And then we investigated many online schools before we finalized Nisai. So kind of we talked to many schools, and finally we chose Nisai as the, let me say, the option to kind of continue the education. What we liked about Nisai, as you know, Miss Leslie was just talking about, what even before starting, what part really struck to us was that we just spoke. It's like 30 minutes class, and we all know the attention cannot, very difficult even for a typical person to stay focused for 1 hour, and even more difficult for an ASD child to stay focused for that, let's say, 1 hour. So kind of 30 minutes class was there, and also we found it well structured. So those 30 minutes were kind of very structured as to what happens in the first 5 minutes, the next 10, the next 10, and the last 5 minutes. So kind of there is a structure, and which kind of makes for ASD's child, I would say, life a little bit more simpler. Also, as we spoke, because there's no video, there's no need to talk, and mostly chat to communicate. And let's say in our case, our son is much more comfortable typing than speaking, and it's much better, let's say, mode of communication for him in this kind of setup. Yeah. Also, being an online one, we had multiple options to choose from and multiple subjects. So kind of it gave a lot of flexibility to adjust the time, depending on where you are, and kind of we could find, let's say, a proper time, even though we are in a, let's say, this time zone, CET time zone, but we could still find, let's say, a relevant time for these classes. And most importantly, as we're again talking about, because the recordings are available, right, it's possible to review them, go back, and even as parents, we can also help, in need by looking at what exactly has been taught, maybe on the same day. Yeah. So what has really helped, while I would say in both the setup, the learning was happening, but let's say in this setup, the whole anxiety or this whole overwhelming feeling has gone away. And let's say, hence, other behavioral issues which maybe were happening because of, let's say, this pressure of school has kind of reduced. And I think overall, let's say, the level of happiness or confidence in the child has gone up. Also, we found, let's say, in the last 1 year, right, the staff and the teachers were very supportive. And I think at a couple of times we gave feedback, for example, on this level of assignment, which was incorporated. Also, I think the school gave options of, audio recording, right, where you can record beforehand and send across. So, okay, I think all possible concessions, what is there, has been given, right, to just ease the transition and life of the kid, right, as much as possible, right. So we are really appreciative of that. So in our case, I believe, not just ASD, but I think any kid who has kind of a learning difficulty in a physical setup, I think this platform is, I believe, the right platform where you can still have learning in a very safe and secure environment. Finally, I think it's more for Nisai. I think there are many options, but if you can add more subject options going forward, I think it would help a lot more, and maybe many more kids across can kind of enroll into the platform. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. That the perspective that you give there, the analysis, and it is analysis of why Nisai's worked for you and Tanmay is really, really impactful, because what I heard in there was that the core thing was the anxiety and the overwhelm, and how using the virtual academy, the school, online learning, meant that you could reduce that, and then that reduced the issues around behavior. And I think it's something really, really important and powerful in there, and that allowed for Tanmay to grow and engage in the learning. And I've also got to say, as a father of teenagers, it's never easy, is it? So I think that analysis is really powerful, and I'd like to draw through as well about how there was that piece of you being behaviour detectives and really focusing on your child's needs. Now, the voices that we've heard from our parents are essential in helping us shape a greater understanding and inclusivity. And what I do hope is that if others become Nisai parents, that they make sure that they also engage with with Nisai learning to help them improve and grow the service for all of our young people. Okay, so now just before we move on to the question and answer section, we just could take a moment to look at what Nisai is preparing for the students in this summer. So there's going to be a short interval with a few slides that will be coming up. So this summer, Nisai is offering a special personal, social, health and economic education course, PSHE, with interactive lessons and real-life scenarios, which help students build emotional intelligence and develop their critical thinking. And Leslie talked about how important that was. And gain those life skills to navigate today's world. And the course runs from, as you can see, from the 3rd of June through to the 29th of July, with short online classes held 3 days a week. And you can see those different times there. It's open to students aged 14 to 17 with at least a B1 English level, and a simple BKSB assessment is required to join. Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do now, just remind you that the deadline for that course is the 27th. So if you know somebody who wants to benefit, please make sure they apply. And it's a great chance for the young people to make friends, build confidence in English, and enjoy a fun, structured summer with Nisai. And also a way to try out whether the online program would work for your child. So it's a real way to engage with the platform, as the parents have done. Okay, so what we're going to do is open this up a little bit to question and answers. And we've taken some from our audience. So I'd like to invite back our guest speakers, Sam McFarlane, Leslie, and our wonderful, wonderful parents, Sharina and Vivek, to join us for the session. If there's any other questions, if you could put them into the chat now, we'll make sure that we get them covered in this part of the event. Okay, so I have a first question, and really this is aimed at Leslie. So a parent's asking that their daughter is hoping to start with Nisai soon, and she understands she doesn't have to attend online lessons, but can she just watch the recordings, as she doesn't like being on camera? So Leslie, can you go through what that process is, please?
In our online lessons, students are not on camera at all. So hopefully that helps to alleviate any concerns for your daughter. The reason we do that is so that the learning is purely on the lesson, and it also helps to focus the students and remove any more of those kind of social anxieties. We do have some students who do purely watch recordings only and only engage with that. But I would say to get the most out of the sessions, it's best if they can attend the live lessons.
So I think that there's the clarity around that one, and Claire Ath has just made the response that she really struggles with that. And the other thing to point out, as Leslie was talking about in the presentation, is that there's so many other ways to communicate that the platform has. Okay, so that's a really cool question. And I guess sort of attached to that question is a question about, is there a limit on the number of children per class?
We keep our class size quite small, I would say. It's 15 or under usually. And again, that helps, obviously have the focus on the students and helps give them that time that they need within that 30-minute session.
Okay.
It sometimes depends on the subject.
Right. Okay. So sorry, in what way does it depend on the subject, Leslie?
Just sometimes, for example, like if we're doing we have like a speaking club, things like that, we might have more than possibly 15 attend those types of things. But in terms of the academic lessons, it's usually 15 or under. Oh, brilliant.
So what we heard in there then was that there are also other kinds of events, just like a normal school.
Yes, there is. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. So I think that's quite important in terms of, and certainly when we were talking to our parents earlier, that there are elements of the virtual academy which provide opportunities in other ways than just formal lessons. Okay, they're really, really important. I have got a question. I think we'll go both to Sam and Leslie, which is, can children with autism and ADHD concentrate for 30 minutes per lesson? And is there a trial class before you can start? So I think both of you, this concentrating for 30 minutes per lesson is really interesting. And I know Vivek really, really focused on that when he was talking about his son. So Sam, have you got thoughts on that?
I was wondering who was going to go first. I think concentrating for 30 minutes?
Yeah.
As a block again, it comes back to the individual and how their barriers present. So if a child has ADHD and hyperactivity is part of their presentation, it may be really challenging actually to concentrate and sit still for 30 minutes. You see that in classrooms up and down in all schools. I wouldn't say it was beyond the realms. I think with the right support and the right with the right kind of facilitation, it is possible to concentrate. I think the things that you might need to look for with an online platform is like, does the child need to stand to concentrate? Do they need to stand while learning? Do they have little like brain refocusing breaks? There's lots of things that could be done around that. If focus is the challenge. I think for me, it will come back to really getting to know the child. What are they able to do? What do they struggle? You know, what are the barriers? And working from that bit first. I don't know, Leslie, you may have a different view or something else to add to that.
No, I agree. Obviously, again, it's, you know, all students are individuals. It's going to be different challenges for their particular barriers that they have, but we do tend to find that within the 30-minute lesson most students can cope quite well with that. Within the lesson, it's not like they're sitting having to listen for the full 30 minutes. It's not like a lecture style lesson. It's very much interactive, so they're doing things, and that helps to help focus their attention. So it might be that they're answering a poll, they might be adding something on the board, they might be sharing their answer in the private chat or the chat. And again, you know, if a student does tell us that they're struggling, we can give them that little break, and we have that leeway. So we very much get to know our learners and what they need. And like you said, you know, they because they're not in a traditional classroom, they can stand up, they can move about if they need to, they can have their fidget toys if they need to. You know, none of that is seen because we don't have cameras, so they can be comfortable doing what they need to do whilst they learn.
Yeah, the other bit I was going to add to that is I've taught many students with those kinds of challenges, and actually one of the things that works really well is doodling, and you can doodle, can't you, and be listening, and that's a really kind of low key, really easily accessible strategy that you can just do really quickly. Just allow the doodling, and obviously it's really discreet when you're learning online as well.
Absolutely fantastic. I have quite a serious, these are all serious questions, but one which I think is quite challenging, which came in quite early on. And Sam, maybe from your experience, the question was, if a child with autism often shows challenging behaviour and outbursts, and he can't easily control that behaviour, is it safe if we allow them to take a medicine to control his behaviours?
Yeah, I saw that one actually, and I think without wanting to go beyond my professional remit, if medication is being suggested or prescribed, I think that is a conversation to have between yourself and the paediatrician or the doctor. I guess I would want to ask questions as to, you know, what is the intention of the medication? What are we hoping for by through this prescribed medication, and what are the side effects of that? So what is the impact if we are doing that to in some way kind of affect behaviour? That and that, but beyond that, I mean, that obviously is a very medical question, but there are certain questions that I would ask around the impact of that and the intention. I go back to, if we're talking about behaviour though, I go back to that behaviour is communication, and yet, and I totally appreciate that some behaviour can be very challenging and can be very challenging for parents to manage, but there will be an aspect of that behaviour that is communicating something to you, and it's really important to try to unpack what that communication is. And let's not forget that some people with autism have very different styles of communicating, and it might not be straightforward in understanding what's happening there. but it's really important for the child or the young person to be able to express themselves. And I go back to that ABC. You could start there with having a look at what is happening when this behaviour happens, when this is challenging, what is happening around that individual at the time, and what's in the environment, what is the learning content, because sometimes it can be a reaction to something that they're learning. It's not always. It can be something that you have not thought about actually, but it's worth taking the time to get to know that and unpack that.
I mean, the other thing that did sort of come to mind was the importance of multidisciplinary learning, multidisciplinary planning around a child as well, and the quality of and I don't know if Sharina and Vivek have got anything that they want to push in there, but there's something about how we ensure that all of the different professionals are working in a joint up manner. Yeah, and here in the UK, you know, we have our education and healthcare plans, which tries to pull all those things together, but in other places around the world, that's not the case. Okay, so I think there's something important about multidisciplinary working in there. Thank you, Sam. That's fantastic. Okay, so I've got two more questions. The first one is, I think, probably for Leslie. It's just a question about GCSEs. So my daughter's hoping to start one GCSE, but if that goes well and she wants to do more, what would be an option? How does the term structure work in Nisai? So Leslie, how would that work?
It would certainly be an option. Our term goes from September to July. It follows like the UK structure. So we have 3 terms. It would depend on when in the year she wants to start a second GCSE or more GCSEs, because depending on when it is, we might say, you know, perhaps she's missed too much. We don't think that possibly she might be able to catch up. We would recommend she starts it next year. We always look at what we feel is best for the student and best for their interests. But it is a possibility depending on when it is. And obviously, all the lesson recordings would be available for another subject if they start a few weeks later.
Okay. And then the other question that's come in is, what if a child at primary school level is able to learn but cannot yet talk much or type? How do you support them in this learning? So I think there's something here about how old that child is, perhaps their cognitive ability. At what age do you look, Leslie, at starting to move online?
Again, it's very much an individual thing. It depends on, you know, if that child's ready for our sort of learning platform. I would say they would need to be able to communicate with us in some way. But it might be, you know, that way could be through learning polls. So are they able to click on the correct answer, because we do have learning polls that don't always necessarily have to write long sentences and long structures. You know, can they draw diagrams? So there are other ways to interact, but I would say that they need to be, as Paul said, that they have to have that cognitive level to be able to use and utilize the classroom.
Okay, thank you. And do you make the assessment on the way in for the young people?
We have what we call prior learning assessments, which we issue for various subjects depending on the age and the subject choice, and that will give us an understanding of what that child's sort of skills and knowledge are, and possibly where there's some learning gaps. So we do that.
Thank you. And I've got one final question. So thank you everybody for all those different questions, but I think possibly for Sam, which is about, with your breadth of experience, how do you get team members motivated to continually empower students with ASD? Because it can be difficult.
How do we get, sorry, I missed
team
the first
members.
bit.
So how do we get people, how do we get other teachers and educators in school to feel empowered and motivated to work with our children?
Again, I think, well, first of all, I think being a teacher is it's a calling, it's a vocation, and I would like to think, although I am realistic, that you know, the reason we get into teaching is because we want to see our children and young people thrive and move on in their lives, yeah, and learn things and we get excited about that as teachers. I think when it comes to teaching any person with additional needs, and that includes a person with autism, as a teacher, it's about making that connection with your pupils, right? That's really motivating for me as a teacher. Once you make that connection, the learning process becomes a lot more exciting. It becomes a lot easier. I think really it's about motivating teachers to make those connections, to have that rapport with your child or young person, and that it comes over time. It comes over a perseverance and persistence. And again, I bring it back to getting to know that the individual as parents and carers. And I think you can facilitate that process by advocating for your children and helping that process by helping the teachers get to know your child as well, and their interests and their motivations, and you know where they want to go in life and where they aspire to be, and what their hopes are. I don't know whether that completely answered it, but I think what is motivating for a teacher is part of engaging in that learning process and getting to know their children, which you can certainly be a part of.
Okay, I think that's a brilliant answer. And I think it sort of brings us round to where we started in lots of ways, which is about putting the child and young person right at the middle of everything and taking that time to learn them and to learn what they need and what they want and what their aspirations are. So thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you to everybody for today. We've come to the end of the questions. Of course, anybody who's attending this event, please feel free to reach out to the Nisai team. And don't forget, of course, that there is the course coming over the break, which everybody's welcome to attend. I want to say a special thank you to Sharina and Vivek for what they brought to this today. It was absolutely amazing to hear from parents, but also to Sam and to Leslie, just their experience in educating our young people and the care and, dare I say, the love that they give to them, I think is absolutely astonishing. As I said, we've answered all the questions that were posted, and those that came up before that were mostly answered during the presentations. But if there's any further queries, please just get in touch with the Nisai team. Okay, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the evening if you're in Asia, or the rest of the afternoon if you're here in the UK. Heartfelt thanks, and hopefully we'll all meet again soon. Thank you.